welcome back to Automotive Logistics Supply Chain Europe Live. We're pleased to welcome you to this think tank, Pact to the Future, which I'm joined here by three experts and guests that will join me in discussing the future dynamics around packaging. So I'd like to introduce Jürgen Krahé, Senior Commercial Director, EMEA from ORBIS Corporation, Chay Ankers, OEM Automotive Global Business Development Director from DS Smith, and Phil Strafford, Senior Channel Partner Sales at Digimarc. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this afternoon for this session. I'd like to kick off the conversation, but before I do that, you'll see here on the right-hand side, there's a number of polls that we've launched for this session. So the first one is, what do you see as the main driver for change in automotive packaging? And the second one is, what do you see the main factor, deciding factor, is when deciding on a packaging solution? So feel free to make your selections there, and we will come back to discussing those results later on in the session. So to kick the conversation off, I'd like to just start with a quick introduction from everybody and just your initial views on how you see packaging evolving. So let's start with you, Jürgen.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to this think tank. Jürgen Krahé, my name, as Neemish introduced me already, responsible for the commercial part in ORBIS Europe. Yeah, obviously, you know, we are doing a reusable packaging since a very long time. So what is really the evolution we can expect in the next coming years? It's, again, which is nothing brand new. It's, of course, cost reduction wherever possible. The cost pressure is keeping everybody running. Standardization, for instance, is a very concrete example, avoiding the multiple dimensions, not only in the packaging itself, but as well as donnages are becoming even more important in the industry, in many supply chains, even to find a more common, or let's say common solutions there. The second point is driven by innovations, because what we have so far cannot be enough. So we all need to think and to try to understand different industries, the automotive industry in this case, what can be the next step in packaging, which can be even better for individual and, as I said, for common use. And last but not least, as we all have very ambitious goals driven by the European Union, you know, we have until 2030, we have significant CO2 reduction targets to achieve. Supply chains have even become more important, and that's the same for packaging. And yesterday we have seen the United Nations environmental report, a very large document. Nobody has read it, I'm pretty sure, so I didn't. But it says we are far away to be successful. 2020, the climate situation is still worse, even due to the actual unlikely pandemic situation we have, and CO2 should be even less. We are far away from being successful supporting our environment. These are the three most important ones.
Yeah, thank you, Jürgen, for that. Chay?
Yeah, so Chay Ankers, work for DS Smith. I've worked in and around packaging in the automotive industry for many, many years. And I think, you know, what we're seeing is it's very similar to what Jürgen has just expressed there. Pressures are high in the automotive industry. There's a lot of focus on cost, a lot of focus on change and getting those supply chains right. What we're seeing in terms of packaging is that it's bringing more of an open discussion to the packaging table. We're seeing people considering different materials. They're looking at the sustainability side of it. I absolutely agree. The sustainability side, life cycle analysis is going to be key. It's going to be a key deciding factor as we go into the future in terms of what materials are used in which supply chains and how they are designed and how the solutions are put together to ensure that the OEMs and the tier ones can really put their belief in what they are deciding in will deliver the sustainable and circular economy supply chains that they need. We're also seeing a lot more collaboration, a lot more independent parts of organizations coming together to work together to actually get a packaging solution that works not only in terms of part protection, but in terms of process development within the facilities and operations and warehouses. So I think as the world starts to move forward and pick up the changes within the automotive market, the automotive industry, I think packaging is going to start being seen as the important ingredient and variable within the supply chain that brings the opportunity to really get under the carpet and find some extra cost savings and extra efficiencies that these business needs to find today. You know, the world's changing, and it's about redefining packaging in that world. It's about redefining how packaging is utilized by the automotive industry. And I think, you know, with all the pressures on in the market, it's the right time to start doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Chay. That's really interesting. I think you know, the comments you make there about, you know, how it's going to redefine, you know, supply chain and logistics is something very important. Maybe we'll dig into that a little bit further as well.
Okay.
Phil, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and give us some of your views, please.
Sure. My name is Phil Stafford. I'm with Digimarc. I've spent the majority of my career in the consumer packaging space, really focusing on more of the connected or smart packaging solutions. And I personally, I come from a little bit different angle here. I support different industries, but more recently the automotive industry, and I can understand the pressures and the issues related to this category in industry. And where I see packaging going is more becoming less of a commodity and more of a supporting component to blockchain and supply chain, track and trace related issues. Even anti-counterfeiting measures can be applied and used with packaging. And that's really important to the industry, as we're seeing more counterfeit products, as an example, coming into the supply chain. So that's how I view it myself.
Brilliant, thank you, Phil. I think you know, thanks for the introduction there. I think this is some interesting perspectives where you're coming from. I think, you know, maybe we'll go back to what you were talking about, Chay, there, in terms of this being a key driver, packaging being a key driver for optimizing supply chains.
Yeah.
How do we make that shift when we talk about, you know, sustainability, you talk about digital tools, you talk about standardization, you know, where's the shift, right? And what do you prioritize? Because there's some big, they're not small things, right? They're big dynamic changes.
They're not small things. And I think what it is, you know, I think what it is where we stand today, we've got some long-standing approach to packaging within the industry. And I think what we're also seeing is we're seeing different parts of the industry, different players in the industry come forward and say, how do we start to kind of really, you know, get to that 1% element of the supply chain? How do we start coming in and seeing the sustainability? And everything is kind of detached topics. But if you take packaging as what it is, it's a unit that allows you to put the components in to get them to the facility or to get them to the consumer to have their car fixed at the dealership to get it back on the road. So packaging is not just a fundamental for automotive within the OE supply, it's also a fundamental to make sure the aftermarket and service parts industry also works well. So when you look at that, you think, well, we've got all these pressures, we've got supply chain, we've got sustainability, we've got cost, we've got, you know, efficiencies, we've got supply chains that need to be managed. There's many things in there, but packaging sits in probably all of those elements. And I think now the way we pull that together is to start looking at the approach. The approach needs to be more holistic. It needs to look at the supply chain that it is being asked to perform in, and it needs to be considered in all of those topics. Is it the right material, the right packaging choice to give you the sustainable, cost-effective, deliverable supply chain that gets your parts to your operation to your customer's operation in the best landed cost, the best cost to do that, to complete that process from start to finish. And I think that's, I think Jürgen said it earlier on. I think, Phil said it as well. It's about bringing the elements together to start building a different cake or making a different cake. We've had the cake of the past, and now we need to kind of bring some extra ingredients onto it, some cherries, a bit of cream, and just make it, the cake for the future. And I think that's where we're going. So it's about bringing those people together. It's about bringing those things together to start really understanding the value chain. When you understand the value chain, I think it automatically brings in sustainability. It brings in technology. It brings in the warehousing, the logistics, the transport. It brings in the choice of, the circularity questions. Is it a single use? Is it returnable? Is it closed loop? Is it leased? All of those things start to come together. And then what you get at the end of that is a decision made for packaging based upon all the pressures and the topics that need to be brought together. So it's all about viewing it as a total landed cost, the best for the overall supply chain.
Thanks, Jay. Jürgen, Phil?
Yeah, just from my point of view, I do recognize in more than 10 years that there are a lot of discussions ongoing in standardization, for instance. How can we make the world of packaging less complex? Everybody's talking about that. We do a lot in Germany, even on VDA level or in the European Automotive Association or that, and many others are doing that since years. I learned that it's very difficult if sometimes packaging is already in place to change it. Because of course, we have many, many players in the market, in the tier 1 and even tier 2 industry and the OEMs, and bringing all these different angels together once a product is in place, in this case, a packaging is in place, from my point of view, is very difficult. Mm-hmm. So where are the opportunities? If new supply chains coming up, we all should be bold in, let's say, thinking about the right strategy. How can we, from the very beginning, standardize packaging as much as possible? One example, battery supply chains. It's just an emerging market because batteries are becoming more and more part of our supply chains, and it will increase significantly in the next couple of years. Talking about new cars, models, and even outside the automotive or light vehicle industry, in trucks, in buses, in marines, wherever. So starting from the very beginning with different battery suppliers, different OEMs and other tier 1s, how can we in the very beginning already think about to standardize packaging as much as possible? Lessons learned, later on, it will become difficult.
Yeah, and I do agree with that, to be honest, Jürgen. But I think as we're moving into the future, I think there's a sweet spot or an equilibrium where standardization works as well with the non-standard, the bespoke. Because I think what I've seen in my years around this 25 years in the automotive industry, packaging within the automotive industry, is standardized product has a place and it will always have a place. And in certain supply chains, standardized product is probably better. But in other supply chains where it's more complex, it's about unearthing the opportunities that are in there that standardized packaging may not allow you to have. I mean, we do see the importance of standardized packaging, hence the reason why we are, in that space, we have that product. But there is, when you look at a big supply chain carrying a load of standardized packaging in there, it's inherently, in some aspects, carrying some waste in terms of space and things like that. Whereas when you allow a standardized strategy to be mixed with a more flexible approach to how packaging works, then what the OEM gets, what the tier 1 gets, is a more consolidated supply chain. And when you start to bring into that the controls and the counterfeiting and the technology, it will really allow you to understand what's going into the loads and maximizing those loads. So I think this is my opinion, a one-stop approach to packaging is probably not the way forward for the future. It needs to be an amalgamation of all the different packaging media and materials that are available that allow the automotive organizations to get the best out of once serving their customers, so tier 1s, tier 2s to the OEMs, serving their customer, but also the OEMs serving their customer, whether that be an internal customer on the line or whether that be an external customer, the consumer of the vehicle in the dealerships. It's all about what gets the best thing, the best landed price to that point of delivery. And that's an amalgamation of standardized and flexible bespoke packaging. That's what we're being told by our customers. That's what we're seeing when projects are coming through, and that's how we're seeing the future evolve.
Interesting. Phil, what's your take on this?
Well, I agree with all of the points made. I see that there's definitely going to be a pressure related to the packaging. I'm seeing today actually that serializing individual products, also related to the packaging, putting I call it a license plate, a unique ID on that packaging to help it through the supply chain to be able to help with the track and trace elements. But I also see, to the point made earlier, related to the electric cars, the batteries, they are requiring a different supply chain, a different solution set, including the end of life of that product as well, being able to recycle and be able to prove that that product, the battery itself, was completely recycled and disabled, if you will. So I think that we're going to see a significant change, and I've even seen recently more on-demand packaging solutions where coming out of the supply chain that there's needs for coming up with a solution that does fit specific products on demand as they're ordered. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's really interesting, Jürgen, you were saying about, there is or has been, maybe still is, an opportunity on the whole kind of battery supply chain, right? And let's say maybe the rest of it's maybe a little bit too complex to handle all in one go, but there is a clear opportunity here to say, okay, well, let's redefine this a little bit. Let's put some standards in place. Let's put some common practices in place. Is that being done? And how do you make that shift change? I'll go to you, Jürgen, first.
Yeah, let's say, it's a very good question, but it's not so easy to answer. Of course, when we're talking about battery supply chains, for instance, our strategy, I won't talk about too much, is just using two standard container sizes, for instance, reduce the complexity, allowing only two, which is, by the way, with the experience we have in the last 2 years, which is working. It's fine. Obviously, there's no need for something else. So the challenge is then to think about, and this is very important for battery supply chains, is about to make the dunnage customized and very special in order to use a standard container, which is reducing the cost, by the way. And then the second point is, of course, how can we, by talking to our customers, talking to the market, listening and talking to the market, trying even to standardize the dunnage as much as possible. Yeah, because otherwise we have still single solutions using the same or two different container sizes, for instance. More generally, we see there is a trend in the market. Actually, since the last 12 months, there's many companies are thinking about replacement. It could be the user of packaging, but as well the service providers like pooling companies. We see that on both angles. And I would say the decision-making time is very long in the moment. I'm not sure if this is just due to the pandemic situation and the overall, let's say, risk and volatility of the market we see at the moment. It is more that nobody's really convinced that what we already have might be in every angle the right solution. So it seems to be there's a restart in the market to look for the next generation, for the innovations, rather than what is already existing. Did that answer the question, Neemish?
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it's a here for debate, right? So, let me ask the experts on this side. Chay, Phil.
I mean, Phil, have you got anything to add?
You're muted, by the way.
I was muted. I don't have anything to add to that. I think that was a fairly complete answer.
Yeah, and I think the bit there that I can concur with is that the battery world still seems to be in a little bit of flux. People haven't kind of made their minds up with where it needs to go and how it needs to happen. So there's different inquiries coming in and different viewpoints, and I think it's still a complex web of questions and information and different approaches. I think it'll probably keep changing as we go along. I think it'll keep changing.
I think there'll also be other regulations that will be applied to that supply chain, and there's going to be other restrictions and processes to follow. That'll certainly happen.
Yeah.
I mean that's always one of the changing factors, right? Is the standards of regulation that come into play, which always maybe throws a curveball at it all, or a spanner in the works, as they say.
Yeah.
But let me just pick up on a couple of questions that we have coming in. So one is ocean plastics on your radar screen as a packaging material for automotive? What are you hearing from your customers? And interested on the battery front, how the external regulatory environment will impact this. So I guess that's we've kind of discussed that as regulations is certainly going to be a key element to the battery electric supply chain there. But just maybe moving to this question on materials, right? Because I think a lot of the OEMs are starting to look at ocean plastics. There's, as we all know, there's huge amounts of plastics waste in the oceans that's just sitting there. How is that being factored into to the new kind of innovations in packaging materials?
Yeah, it's a very, very important one. So that's, let's say, this innovations is one of our 3 core pillars within ORBIS, and one other of the 3 is sustainability. So not only the green ORBIS logo is already saying we are a green company, we have a very green cycle today, which we try to improve wherever possible. For instance, when we talk about material, we try to use as much recycled material already today. So up to 90% in our bin container. And by the way, this is 100% recycled material. So we buy back the containers and put 100% back of the material for the new production. Ocean pack plastic is one of the material we have already an initiative in the US on that, in order to recover the waste and to use these for new plastic packaging, not bullpens necessarily, but we are working in our laboratories as well on new material mixes, future material mixes to use even more recycled material up to 100%, or in best case 100%, and taking everything from the ocean, in order to use for packaging. That would be great, because to be honest, it must be the way how we need to act in the future. It will take some time, of course, but we must go in this direction, and we try that since a couple of years from now with successful results.
Fantastic.
I would say, related to our company, Digimark, we're heavily involved in the recycling initiatives with plastics, and mainly today it's food-based initiatives. But our technology is used, and we're talking more about this with other companies related to identifying the plastic itself, being able to in the sorting waste streams, be able to identify and be able to pull and properly sort those materials. So that is something that's really interesting to me, because I think as we migrate out of this food discussion related to the packaging, I can see this playing in this industry as well, where there's reusable containers that are being managed, and then identifying those later for how many uses they've gone through, how many rotations, and then also properly recycling them and putting them in the proper stream.
Yeah, and I think from our point of view, I mean, we as an industry, or as a business, I should say, we as a business, we've made a declaration that we will help remove 1 billion pieces of disposable plastic from the environment, really. And what we're doing there is we're designing solutions that would bring an alternative material type to do the same job as a current piece of plastic packaging is doing. And that's working with our customer base, both industrial and consumer customer base, to really get to understand why plastic was there in the first place and what we can do to innovate. So there's been some specific innovations. You know, as a product type, it's a renewable source in terms of where our packaging is coming from, and we're working towards a time where we will be 100% recyclable or reusable products that we'll be producing and manufacturing. And we are looking at different models. You know, can we, you know, in terms of closed loop product, in terms of reusable product, and then as a business, we take our position within the circular economy and sustainability world quite seriously, really. So we've got a very specific, strict, or very detailed and documented sustainability strategy called Now and Next, which has been published to the marketplace and shared with our customers. And we're also affiliated to lots of accreditation people where we've got some market leading metrics that have come out of there. And we are a strategic partner of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who's championing the circular economy discussions. So we're very much focused around how packaging can be a product which you bring into your environments, your supply chains, your businesses, your operations, that can actually deliver some of the challenge that other businesses have, both legislatively and also, you know, from an organization point of view, you know, to deliver sustainable targets, sustainability targets, circular economy targets, and things like that. So there's a lot of focus on it right now. And I think over the next 12, 18 months, they're going to get much more focus, and we'll be definitely out there looking for new innovation that would focus on that plastic in the environment.
Yeah, sure. Is this in terms of when you look at the solutions, and obviously there's cost implications for this, right? So does it increase the cost of the packaging? Does that then affect what you do, and whether you then kind of build standards out of that, or try and align on that cost? Or I guess that, you know, one is the cost, and two is then, you know, does this kind of have any factors in terms of, you know, increased weight, or, you know, and then the cost of also the recycling, right? So, you know, what does that kind of loop look like from a cost perspective? And if that makes sense, as
Yeah, I would jump in there. I would say that related to the packaging, I mentioned earlier about the commodity thinking around most of the packaging that's used in this industry today. And I think that is something that I'm starting to see change. And so those discussions about the packaging, you know, having the lowest cost packaging is number one important. I'm seeing that shift where it's not only to protect the product itself, but also to get to look at the sustainability aspect of the packaging. Also, what is that packaging doing for me? And that's where the supply chain and track and trace elements come into place, where the packaging is certainly set up to do more, and to be able to, I think our goal is really to help the industry understand about the value of the packaging and what else it can do for you. And I think when that mentality is shifted, then I think there's going to be a larger change in the industry, and not just automotive, but most industries, and you know, specifically.
I would agree with that as well, Phil, because just in the last few weeks, I've spoken to several OEMs where they've all mentioned that CO2 is a KPI that will land very soon, absolutely very soon. So, you know, if that is going to be a business driver, it has to be a deciding factor. So it's going to push the focus away purely from a piece price. It's going to bring it more into that total solution that is given.
Yeah, I agree with that. Some of the initiatives I'm seeing in real time right now, where companies are looking at their sustainability platforms, the CO2 side as well, but they're looking at even reducing the number of labels, as an example, that they use on their packaging, and they come to us with those types of discussions to look for a solution to be able to reduce number of packaging as well. Is there something that can be reused and identified as a reusable solution? So I'm certainly seeing that. I'm not selling packaging, but when I hear those discussions in the industry, it's telling me that there's a different mindset that's happening.
Yeah, but that's a very important one, Phil. I agree completely. So it is of course the fact that cost reduction is important. On the other hand, analyzing complete supply chains to understand at the end what are the total costs of ownership when I use a packaging, whatever it is a very important one. Many companies are doing that, like we do, provide it as a service. On the other hand, if I look to another very important point as well for CO2 reduction, is the durability. As longer we can use a product, typically it is better for the environment. Looking to, just a metaphor, looking to the taxi market, there are some OEMs typically providing their brands and cars to the taxi market. Potentially they're not the cheapest one, but they are most durable. So that means the overall costs running these cars significantly longer than a other car is obviously better. And that's the same comparing that to packaging. That's something which is a mindset change. It means, of course, that companies need maybe to spend more capex, which is not maybe the favorite one, in the very beginning. But looking to the end, and as you said, both Chay and Phil, having the CO2 reduction in the mind, what will happen with the packaging? How long will it live? Where is it made from? Can I easily repair it, for instance, instead of complete replacement, just because it's modular, the parts are just modular? And what will happen if it's really broken down and obsolete? So what will happen? Can I recycle it 100%? These are becoming more important factors for packaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would agree with that, Jürgen. I think where that gets pushed a little bit is when you bring the circular economy model on top of it, because it's looking for waste in all aspects of the journey, of everything that it's touching, all the resources that are being consumed. And I think this is where there is a landscape coming towards us where packaging, the different types of packaging materials will exist in the same space. And this is where I think it's going, is there'll be some aspects of where durability wins out. There'll be some aspects where expendable will win out. And I think that is how the future is pushing us, because it depends upon the distance, it depends upon the cost of transport, depends upon the CO2, the types of vessels and ships and planes and vehicles that are being used. When you put all that together, I think it'll probably start to bring different packaging materials into the automotive industry, and they'll share that space in all aspects, whether that be automotive, whether that be aftermarket, whether that be OE supply, whether that be specials and export. There'll be some kind of space sharing going on. And I think that's when the automotive industry gets its most sustainable packaging solution, when there is a commonization of approach and a full understanding of how it does impact the environment. You know, it's durability. If something is in use for a long period of time, it will be better sustainably. But if that's carrying inherent issues into the supply chain, it might not be the best from a circularity point of view. And it's bringing those kind of arguments together and positions together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There is a question here. Maybe you can answer it quickly, and then we'll move to just reviewing the polls. And what I'd like to do is maybe just touch on the points that you were making earlier around how this packaging helps optimize the supply chain. So the question is, where do you see corrugated materials in packaging in the future? So while you're...
So if I take that in terms of the automotive context, where do I see corrugated material in packaging in the future? I see it as having an important role within all industries, and I see it having an important role within the automotive industry. because the automotive industry, it's a globalized business. It's shifting things overseas. It's shifting things in bulk. It's shifting things in small niche quantities. There's lots of things going on in that automotive supply chain. Standardized heavyweight packaging that is used domestically to ship parts from a domestic supplier part to a local, or within that domestic territory OEM's manufacturing facility, that's one chain. The automotive industry has lots of other supply chains where corrugated packaging and corrugated materials will sit and be part of that supply chain. And it's about using that as a really flexible substrate, real flexible material that allows you to really get into the hard to reach areas of your business and extract cost benefit, process improvement, and efficiencies within the business. And I think that's where corrugated materials will sit within the automotive packaging future.
Anything to add, Jürgen, Phil?
Yeah, I'll just add to that is my most recent activity over this past year, especially through COVID, related to the corrugate packaging, is that it's becoming a situation where more and more corrugate is used in short-term use cases, and also what I would say is that it's being now used as a potential identifier for authentic goods. And so I know that I've been involved with some of those types of projects where we're using the corrugate box itself as a authentication point to be able to prove that those parts that are contained within that are authentic, and have worked out some solutions that way. But I'm also seeing, I mentioned earlier, label solutions that are, for cost reduction, trying to remove labels. I'm seeing a more of a license plate-esque serialized version of the corrugate containers that have a unique ID that are basically registering and authenticating the products contained within. So I'm seeing this, but as far as the material itself, I think the industry has run its course on trying to lightweight and continuously trying to improve that. But I think that gives up strength and durability, and I'm seeing the opportunities to be able to reuse, perhaps create a second life for those corrugate boxes and containers.
Yeah, as always part of Menasha Corporation, and we have a even larger sister company which is doing corrugated packaging a little bit longer than ORBIS, already doing plastic packaging. So we have a footprint here, and we do in retail supply chains a lot of corrugated and even displays in supermarket, etc. So there is a need, and as Phil and Chay both said, as long as it's durable, I think it's fair. We can do it. Why not? Yeah, it's even from a CO2 point of view, it's a very fair and good for the environment raw material. But in some cases, of course, I would not agree. So if you need to throw it away after one way, it's maybe not the best option for the environment. Yeah, and we just make a calculation a couple of months ago in the empty football stadiums we have in the moment, unlikely. Yeah, you can fill only in Germany in 1 month 2 football stadiums with corrugated one-way used packaging. That's not nice. So just having these concerns. What we do on top of that is we are working on materials which can replace corrugated material, which we do have a test box in the moment running since a couple of months in the US, which is not corrugated, but it's made of plastic, 100% recycled plastic, which has very similar specifications like corrugate, easy to use, and it can be used 70, 100 times and even become washed, which is maybe a value proposition for that. So I think keeping it where it's durable, one-way packaging, but we need as well both thinking, as I said before, thinking about where can we replace and bring in new materials as well on this side of packaging.
Sure. Can I just come back in there though, Neemish, just on that, because the corrugated as a substrate, I think the EU figures on recycling and recapturing and recovering corrugated waste in the EU, I think it's about 87% of corrugated that goes into the marketplace is recovered and recycled, and that's across all of the European countries. Some countries are even better than that. I think Germany is one of them. I think it's in the 90% where, you know, corrugated waste is being captured. All of that is going back in and being reused to make more boxes. So whilst a box may be used once, within 10, 14 days, it'll be another box and it'll be out there being reused. And when it's captured, it'll be 10, 14 days later and it'll be another box. So it's, you know, when someone sees a cardboard box and they consider it to be a disposable item, you've got to think what happens to it when it goes into it. It becomes another box. So when a car component goes into that box, it goes to the dealer puts it into his recycling, you know, channels. In a month's time, that's another box going through the same supply chain. It is in a reuse. In terms of durability, I mean, corrugated can give some real significant performance in all different materials. So I think it's having that kind of, it's getting people to understand that corrugated it's sustainable, it's renewable, it's lightweight, it has high degrees of performance, it can bring the printing capabilities that give you track and trace, you know, unique identifiers. It's a very, very flexible substrate that, if used correctly in the automotive supply chain, really can dig down into those hard to reach areas that cannot always be got to today, and really start to recover some cost, increase process, benefit the business, benefit the suppliers, you know, and that's how it should be seen in the future. It's a variable.
Yeah, I agree in general. Just adding a few words is completely agreeing what Chay said. What we need, of course, to consider are the CO2 emissions during disposal and new production of product. We should not forget. So taking the whole product life cycle into account.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just quickly review the polls that we launched earlier. So the first one was, what do you see as the main driver for change in automotive packaging? So yeah, sustainability comes out on top, then followed by supply chain optimization. So let's have a quick talk about that. Just scroll down, and then the second one was, what do you see the main deciding factor is when deciding on packaging solution? And the winner is packaging cost.
It's a tie.
Oh, a tie. It's a tie.
Oh, no, it's just changed.
No, it's just changed. Total landed cost, value chain business case. Okay, there you go. Followed by packaging cost, and then part protection.
What about questions on the battery flows in the chat rooms? Is there anything we can maybe focus on?
Let's have a look. So do you see that there will be fully standardized industry standard EV battery packaging solution for the service aftermarket automotive industry used by a major majority of the players? If so, when?
That's an excellent question. Fantastic. Yeah. So yes and no. Yes, we see it as one of the suppliers of indirect material. Yes, we see it. And by then, within 12 months, the concerns I have, are we within the whole market already aligned about that? So, and this is starting maybe in the dimension of the aftermarket cell modules, etc. So this is something very important I mentioned earlier in our discussion. So yes, definitely, and it will take place. We see that in the markets, but what I would like to see more improved is more communication between the different players in the market in order to have the same dimensions to avoid, for instance, as I said earlier, different donnages. And that's a very important one, as even aftermarket, we are talking about dangerous good transportation. So we are falling under the radar of the UN dangerous goods certification, and we have to follow these rules here.
Great. Anything to add, Phil, Chay?
Not from my point of view.
Okay. Well, yeah. I know that we're nearly out of time, so what I'd like to do is, and it's been a fascinating discussion, so thank you for that. Let's, I think, let's wrap up with one question that I have there in terms of what's the one or two things that you'd like to see in packaging this year? So let's start with you, Jürgen.
Battery transportation. That's really what it is. Yeah, absolutely. In one sentence or more?
You can elaborate a little bit if you want.
Yeah, this is really not only because the automotive industry is really everybody. We have until 2025, we have more than 150 new models to launch in the European market only, driven by 6 major OEMs. So these battery cell transportation and even battery packs we see, will become more significant. These numbers will increase dramatically, and then we have to consider as well additional, let's say, chemicals, not only lithium-ion, there are more to come, I'm pretty sure. And we have to consider as well transportation of obsolete batteries, damaged batteries, and even damaged batteries which are set up as dangerous goods, even more dangerous, fire or explosive. Yeah, so this is what's going on this year and will drive us for the next couple of years.
Okay, great. Chay?
I think it'd be getting the industry to really focus around total landed cost. Getting more people into, alongside what Phil was saying earlier on, coming away from that commodity view and really look at it as an integral ingredient. Because I think if the industry does that, then it will start utilizing packaging's characteristics, whether it be plastic, metal, or corrugated, in the right way to deliver the right supply chains. That will get them, that will get the whole process started off quickly, deliver supply chains that are right at the beginning. As Jürgen said earlier on, get it right at the beginning. Change the focus a little bit.
Okay, brilliant. And Phil?
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I think the mindset change is going to be important moving forward, and I see use cases every day that are coming across my plate related to track and trace and using the packaging as a unique identifier in the supply chain, and I see more of that occurring, and I'm looking forward to working with more of the companies for those situations. That's where I see some value and certainly some progress.
Brilliant. Well, there's some great things there for us to focus on this year, and of course, no doubt packaging will continue to evolve the innovative solutions, and of course, you're at the cutting edge there of making these innovations happen, and of course, being there to help drive some of this change forward as well, right? I mean, having a conversation with some OEMs during the lead up to this event, and one of the discussions that we had was looking at how the service providers in the industry are the ones that can really take this kind of drive towards innovation, and the OEMs and the tier suppliers want to focus on building cars and building components, and it's for companies like yourselves to actually go, okay, well, this is how we can help you, and these are the innovations that we're presenting to you to help you solve your problem. So look forward to seeing more innovations from you and having more conversations like this with you at more of our automotive logistics and supply chain events. So thank you again very much for a really fascinating conversation. Let's continue the conversation. Of course, if you're available, so if there's anybody in the audience that wants to reach out, please do reach out to these fine gentlemen, and I'm sure they've got lots to talk to you about. So thanks again, and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank
you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.